"You've really outdone yourself this time, Eliza," Owen said, his voice dripping with that false warmth that always made my skin crawl. He was leaning against the doorway of my office on the 42nd floor of the Carver and Holt building in downtown Denver, his hands shoved casually in his pockets like he owned the place. The early morning sun lit the skyline behind him, but I could see the flicker of something sharper in his eyes. The kind of satisfaction people get when they think they found your weak spot. I set down my coffee, meeting his gaze. "If this is about the Westbrook account, you're welcome to take a look at my numbers. They speak for themselves." "Oh, they speak," he said, stepping inside and lowering his voice. "It's just, some people are wondering if they're speaking for you, or for Mark Holt." There was Mark Holt, our managing partner. 62, married, the face of the firm for decades. And now, apparently, the centerpiece of a rumor that I'd never imagined would be attached to my name. "What exactly are you implying?" I asked, my voice even though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. He smiled like a man savoring the moment. "Relax. I'm just saying, not everyone gets promoted to senior design director in record time. Must be nice to have allies in high places." I'd beaten Owen for the promotion 3 weeks ago. It wasn't even close. My designs had landed 3 major contracts in 18 months, while his projects limped along over budget and behind schedule. But in his world, there was only one explanation for my success, and it wasn't talent. My name is Eliza Kane. I'm 33 years old, and I've spent 15 years proving myself in an industry that's still trying to decide whether women belong in its top ranks. I thought my work spoke louder than any stereotype. That morning, in the quiet hum of my office, I realized I was wrong. By Wednesday, the air in the office had changed. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The quick glances when I stepped into the break room, the sudden stops and hushed conversations as I walked past. But then the emails started. Not directly to me, of course. Always accidentally CC'd. Always vague enough to avoid outright accusation but sharp enough to cut. One from a junior designer to our marketing lead. "Do we need Holt's approval on this, or will Eliza handle it, like she handled the promotion?" Another from a project manager to a client. "Mr. Holt won't be joining the meeting today, but our new senior director will. She's very close with him." It was the same script every time. Suggestive. Poisonous. Impossible to defend against without sounding defensive. I'd seen this tactic before. You plant a seed and then you water it with silence. Let the rumor grow until it's the only thing people see when they look at you. And I knew exactly who was doing the planting. Owen had been careful, never saying anything directly to me that I could use against him, but dropping just enough in the right ears. In a place like Carver and Holt, where perception was currency, this was enough to bankrupt a career. That Thursday, I sat in my office staring at the Denver skyline, realizing something I'd been resisting since the first whisper. This wasn't just gossip. This was a campaign. And campaigns had objectives. If I didn't stop it soon, mine would be my job. The breaking point came the following Monday morning. I'd barely set my bag down when my phone buzzed with a calendar invite from Mark Holt's assistant. Private meeting. 9 a.m. No subject line, no agenda. Just his name. By the time I stepped into his corner office, the blinds were drawn and the view of the Rockies was shut out. Mark sat behind his desk, fingers laced, his expression unreadable. "Close the door, Eliza," he said. His tone wasn't unfriendly, but it carried the weight of something serious. I did as he asked, my heels clicking against the hardwood. "There's been chatter," he began. "I want you to know I don't put stock in it. But clients talk. And in this business, perception can become reality faster than truth." Chatter. That was a polite word for it. The knot in my stomach tightened. "Are you asking if I've been involved with you?" I said, forcing my voice to stay even. Mark's jaw tensed. "I'm telling you that this firm can't afford distractions. You've got a major project coming up and I want you focused. But if these rumors keep spreading, the board will want resolution." Resolution. In other words, if I couldn't make the problem disappear, they'd make me disappear. I walked out of his office with my pulse pounding, the hallway feeling longer than it ever had before. This wasn't about my performance anymore. Owen was maneuvering me into a position where my firing would look like the firm protecting its reputation, not like him winning a personal vendetta. And if I let him keep control of the narrative, he'd succeed. That night, long after most of the office had gone dark, I sat at my desk staring at the glow of my computer screen. I wasn't looking at my current projects. I was deep in the firm's shared archives, scrolling through years of internal files Owen had touched. I told myself I was just curious, but the truth was I was hunting. If Owen wanted to paint me as unethical, I needed to know exactly how clean his own hands were. Around 10:30 I found it. A folder tucked deep inside an old project directory labeled Client Undername and under 2019. It was the kind of generic name you'd never click on unless you were looking for it. Inside were PDF scans of expense reports, thousands of dollars billed to the firm for hospitality and relationship development. Lavish dinners at steakhouses, VIP tickets to Nuggets games, luxury hotel stays. On their own they weren't damning. But the dates didn't line up with any official client meetings on our records. And buried halfway down the list was a weekend at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. 2 rooms paid in cash, during a week the procurement manager for a major retail chain just happened to be in town. My pulse quickened. I opened Owen's travel logs. Sure enough, there he was, same dates, same city. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces clicking together. This wasn't just sloppy accounting. This was the kind of thing that could end a career, maybe even trigger a state ethics investigation. And suddenly the game felt very different. By Tuesday morning my plan was forming. I didn't confront Owen right away. That would have been too easy for him to spin. Instead I spent the next 2 days quietly pulling every thread I could find. Copies of receipts. Archived client meeting notes. Email confirmations for personal dinners that matched the expense claims. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. There were entertainment invoices tied to clients we'd lost months before the charges were filed. Payments marked as client hospitality for venues that didn't even have corporate accounts with our firm. But the real prize came from an unlikely source, one of the junior accountants in finance. I'd worked with her on a budget review last year and she owed me a favor. Over coffee in the lobby cafe, she slid a plain manila envelope across the table. "I didn't see this," she said quietly. "And you didn't get it from me." Inside was an internal audit summary. A private one. It flagged Owen's expense reports for irregularities and non-compliance with reimbursement policy. The document was marked confidential. Partner review only. Meaning the partners had seen it. And nothing had happened. As I walked back upstairs, the envelope tucked under my arm, I realized why. If this was exposed, it wouldn't just burn Owen. It would scorch the people who'd ignored it. Which meant I wasn't just holding leverage over him anymore. I was holding it over the whole boardroom. The quarterly leadership meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning, and I knew it was my stage. By the time I walked into the glass-walled conference room, the partners were already gathered. Mark Holt at the head of the table, the other senior directors lined up on either side. And Owen, sitting 2 seats down from me, wearing the smug expression of a man who thought his win was inevitable. I waited until the agenda had droned through the first few items before speaking. "Before we move on," I said, sliding a slim black folder onto the table, "I think there's something the leadership team should review." Owen's eyes flicked to the folder, then to me. "If this is about the Westbrook project." "It's not," I cut in. "It's about expense reports." The partners shifted uncomfortably. I could feel Mark's gaze sharpen as I opened the folder and fanned out printed receipts like playing cards. Dinners, hotel invoices, and the Broadmoor weekend in full color. "These were all billed to the firm as client entertainment," I said evenly. "Except half of them don't align with any scheduled client meetings. And some involve companies we haven't worked with in over a year." Owen's face drained of color. "You've got no context for those charges." "I have plenty of context," I interrupted, sliding the audit summary across the table. "So does finance. And so does the internal review you've all been sitting on." The room went still. Even Mark leaned back, the weight of what I'd just said hanging in the air. For the first time since this started, it wasn't me under the microscope. Owen tried to recover, but his voice had lost its usual swagger. "These are isolated incidents. Normal in business development." Isolated. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. 13 flagged reports in 18 months. Over $15,000 in hospitality, with no documented business outcome. And a weekend at the Broadmoor with the procurement manager from North Star Retail, right before they extended their contract by 3 years. One of the partners, a man named Clayton who rarely spoke unless money was on the line, broke in. "Is that legal?" "It isn't," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "In fact, under Colorado statute, it could qualify as commercial bribery." The words landed like a dropped brick. Two partners exchanged glances. Another cleared her throat and started flipping through the receipts like she couldn't look fast enough. Mark's gaze had shifted from me to Owen, and it wasn't friendly. "We'll need to discuss this privately," he said, but I could hear the finality in his tone. "No," I replied, my heartbeat steady now. "We need to address it here. Because for the past 3 weeks, I've been the subject of a targeted smear campaign suggesting my promotion was due to an inappropriate relationship. And I want every person in this room to understand who's really been compromising the firm's integrity." Owen's mouth opened, then shut again. He had nothing. For the first time, the silence in that room belonged to me. The meeting dissolved faster than I expected. Two partners escorted Owen out, their voices low but urgent. Mark stayed behind with me, his jaw tight. "Eliza, why didn't you bring this to me sooner?" I met his eyes. "Because I needed it to be undeniable. If I'd come to you with half the evidence, I'd be the one on the defensive. This way you couldn't ignore it." He didn't argue. Which told me everything about how close this had come to being swept under the rug. By that afternoon, an internal memo went out. Owen was on indefinite leave pending an investigation. HR followed with a reminder to all employees about the firm's ethics policy, the corporate equivalent of airing dirty laundry in the town square. But the most telling part came later in the break room. 3 different colleagues, people who had avoided me for weeks, stopped to say, "Good job" in the meeting. No one mentioned the rumors directly, but the subtext was clear. They knew where they'd come from, and they knew they weren't true. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think the war was over. Owen had lost his footing, but men like him didn't just fade quietly into the background. And I wasn't done making sure he couldn't come back. The next step was making sure Owen's damage couldn't be contained inside Carver and Holt's walls. I called a friend from my Cornell days, Rachel Morrison, now a senior investigator for the Colorado State Ethics Commission. We met after hours at a small cafe on Colfax Avenue, the kind of place where no one paid attention to the people in the back booth. I slid her a USB drive across the table. "Everything's on there. The receipts, the audit, email confirmations. You'll find enough to keep you busy." Rachel didn't even look at it. She just tucked it into her bag. "You want a formal inquiry?" "I want the truth on the record," I said. "If that means an inquiry, so be it." Within a week, the commission had sent formal requests to the firm for documentation. Mark tried to keep it quiet, but in a company like ours, news traveled faster than policy updates. People knew. The gossip that once followed me through the hallways had shifted. Now it was Owen's name that carried weight, and not the good kind. One Friday morning, I caught a snippet as I passed the design bullpen. She took him out without even breaking stride. They didn't say my name, but I knew they meant me. For the first time in weeks, the whispers didn't sting. They satisfied. Owen never came back. 3 weeks after the investigation began, the partners announced his mutual separation from the firm. The statement was polite, almost sterile, but everyone knew it was a firing. And thanks to the ethics inquiry, it followed him well beyond our office. By spring, word had spread through the Denver architecture scene. Firms that once would have snapped him up suddenly had no openings. His LinkedIn profile went quiet. Even the golf course where he'd spent half his weekends quietly dropped him from its corporate membership roster. As for me, the rumors evaporated almost overnight. Clients who'd been hesitant before were now calling me directly, asking for my input, trusting my decisions. My team delivered the first phase of the Riverwalk Pavilion project ahead of schedule, and Mark gave me the green light to lead 2 more major developments. One evening, I stood on that same 42nd floor, looking out at the Denver skyline as the city lights began to flicker on. I thought about all the times I'd been told to just ignore it, to keep my head down. That wasn't me. Owen had tried to write my story for me, but I'd taken the pen back. And in the process, I'd written his ending too. Not out of spite. Out of self-respect. And if anyone ever wondered again how I got where I am, I'd be more than happy to tell them. I built it. Brick by brick. Beam by beam. And I didn't need to sleep my way to the top. I owned my way there. 6 months later, Denver felt like a different city to me. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. The Riverwalk Pavilion was complete, gleaming in the late summer sun. I stood on its upper terrace with a cup of coffee, the scent of fresh cedar from the new benches drifting in the breeze. Below, people strolled along the water, children chasing each other near the fountains. This was mine, not an ownership but an authorship. Every design choice, every structural decision, every late night at the drafting table had led here. And now it stood finished, a piece of the city that would outlast every rumor anyone had ever tried to attach to my name. The office had settled into a new rhythm. No more whispers in hallways, no sidelong glances in meetings. Colleagues came to me with ideas, not doubts. The young designers, especially the women, began dropping by my office just to talk, to ask advice, to tell me they felt like maybe there was a place for them at the top after all. As for Owen, I heard he was working out of a cramped converted garage in Colorado Springs, chasing small residential jobs. No partners. No staff. No influence. He was a ghost in the industry now and no one missed him. One evening, leaving the office, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. Same woman, different presence. The kind of presence you earn by surviving a storm and walking out the other side without losing yourself. Owen's chapter in my life was over. But mine? I was still building. And this time, I knew there wasn't a rumor in the world strong enough to take me down.